Um, Before we lose you, because we've got about 20 minutes left, I want to talk about your piece. I want to talk about Web3
Hmm.
because a lot has changed since that piece came out, although I think the principles in the body of it still really holds. But we've had, over like May and June, a broad kind of reset or destruction of crypto asset prices. I'll separate that from like the fundamentals of the crypto world, which I'm curious to get your guys' perspectives on. But would love to just like start out by kind of just getting your thoughts on what has transpired and like general perspective on the space and what you're seeing, in terms of as an investor, founders going and doing and building.
And just a general vibe check. Like,
Vibe check.
quick vibe check. Lee, how are you
Yeah.
doing? And and are you feeling more bullish, you know, as
Yeah.
bullish, less, more
Thank
bearish?
you
Like
for
how
asking.
yeah, like
Yeah,
how are you doing, you know?
That's very kind. Well, I just got better from COVID, so I'm already doing better
that's
than
great.
before.
Was that an
Um,
NFT week, COVID?
it was, yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I
man.
think I might have gotten
Everyone
it
got it.
before, but I was basically out for like NFT
Okay.
NYC. I didn't see anyone. I didn't make it to our
Uh,
own parties.
uh,
Hope everyone had fun at our parties, but I wasn't there because I had COVID. Um, but yeah, anyways, so I'm doing pretty well. I think to answer your question, I think I'm a really strange creature in Web3. I'm kind of like an aberration in the landscape because I got into Web3 for really ideological reasons. Um, so when I was talking about my backstory and how I was investing out of this fund that was scoped to the future of online work and consumer tech, like I think one thing that I didn't mention was I had always felt this tension between the platforms that I was investing in and like the professed vision of enabling anyone to achieve financial stability and economic freedom through working on these platforms versus what was happening in reality, which is that a lot of the value came from the equity value of these companies, and that accrued to a very, very small group of people: investors, founders, early employees, executives, etc. And notably, who's missing from that is the participants on the platforms themselves. So I was really drawn to Web3 as a way to alleviate that tension and imbalance that I perceived in the platform world, wherein I felt like there were huge swaths of people who are actually contributing the value to these platforms, but left out of the ownership of them. And so I got into Web3 from a mission perspective of how do we make that situation much more equitable? How do we make the internet more fair and architect new platforms that actually share ownership much more broadly? And I say that I'm kind of like an aberration in crypto because I feel like for the last year or so, for maybe the last 2 years of the bull market, I felt like that message was oftentimes drowned out by a lot of the price action that was happening, or a lot of like, you know, projects that would launch to huge fanfare and then like kind of dissipate into nothingness. There were just a lot of distractions happening over the last 2 years that I felt like the mission element of crypto sort of got lost in all of that
hmm.
noise. And I actually find it refreshing now where we are at this moment, because I think a lot of the noise is finally settling down and we can actually focus on what the long term mission of crypto is, like why we're all here in the first place. Like, what are we actually trying to build? Our mission as investors is nothing short of building a more equitable internet. That is why we are in crypto as variant funds. Like, we think crypto can be the basis of a more equitable, fair internet that actually enables people to own wealth building assets for the first time ever. Um, and so we're still really deeply committed to that vision and that mission. And I think finally, like we're finally in a market environment in which we can cut through the noise, and there's less of like the wild speculation that's happening that I think detracts from that long-term mission.
Do you know like Cape Cod? You were in the
The
Boston area
place,
for a while. You
yeah,
know Cape Cod?
yes.
Yeah. Um, I keep thinking of this as like Cape Cod. I've talked to our friend Sean Puri about this in the past as well. It's like Cape Cod, in the summer. It's like everyone goes to Cape Cod. Those places are packed. It's like the hot place, all these like vacationers come in and rent all the houses, all the prices go through the roof, everything's insane. And then come Labor Day weekend, it's crazy. And like starting in September, it starts getting real quiet in Cape Cod, and like all of those people leave and they go back to wherever they live. And the people that stay in Cape Cod and that live there are the locals. And they're like the true Cape Cod lovers and believers, and the prices come down, and it's like it's the place where they love to live. And I keep thinking about that. I mean, with asset markets in general, but like crypto, there were a lot of tourists that were in
Hmm.
it not because they understood, underlying fundamentals, or they understood the vision of a kind of a truly equitable internet as you laid it out, but because they thought they could make a quick buck, or like it was the
Yes,
get rich quick scheme of the day. And a lot of those people have left, and I know a lot of those people, and there's nothing wrong with it actually. It's sort of a tale as old as time for humans to chase after those things. But the real builders of the space, if it does end up being and fulfilling the promise of what a lot of people think or hope, are the ones that are more excited now than they were. Because now, like for you guys, first off, like prices are hopefully going to reset to some extent in the private markets too. And you're going to be able to invest in things at a more reasonable price point and generate better returns for your investors, which creates a feedback loop of more money flowing into the space, and allows more projects to be built. So actually, in the aggregate, that should be good for founders as well. But there's a lot, I mean, it is a lot to unpack just because of all of the speculative fever that
hmm,
had to get drained out in a short period of time. I mean, all like the
yeah,
unwinding of Three Arrows Capital, and the impact that's had on BlockFi, and some of these other things that you've seen that are more publicized. I think it had to happen, and it had to happen in tech broadly. Like the whole tech bubble has sort of pulled back, to get just some of this like crazy speculation out of the markets.
I agree.